Hey everyone, welcome to Financial Revelations. I am David Safransky, your host, and I am currently experiencing my 44th straight month of winter, it seems like, in Cleveland. Everything's covered in ice, and it's going to get icier as the day goes on, and we're going to get 5 inches of snow. So I hope you like winter because you're going to get a lot of it. In any case, let's talk finance and economics and presidents and inflation reports and outlooks into the future, because I have all of that for you today. So I'm going to talk fast, so you got to listen fast. But before we get there, you can hear me every Thursday morning on WCRF 103.3 on Thursday mornings from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. You could use the Moody Radio App to hear it too, wherever you're at. Like if you were on a boat in the middle of the Amazon with me in March, when we're doing the March mission trip, you could use the Moody Radio app, because I brought a Starlink with me, and you could listen. You could also stand right next to me and listen as we record, or do the radio show from the middle of the Amazon. March, we're going. You can't take anybody else with us, but you can support it if you want. You can go to nativosusa.org to find out more about the trip and see some pictures. And we have some video of our mission base that we bought a few years ago, and we've improved and put houses, and there's a well there. There's, in the middle of the jungle, there's flush toilets, believe it or not. They have a septic system that they put in. So you could take a lukewarm shower, but if it's really hot, because there's this big water cache that sits on top of a tower, you can get some hot water there too. So the thing is when you're in the middle of the jungle, you don't want hot water. You want cool water, and that's hard to find. So you could submit questions anytime to us that we'll answer on the podcast. Just email Corey@epsf.com, and we'll answer those questions. Or if it's a very kind of narrow question, I'll just answer it via email. So we'll get back to you. So this week, a couple of inflation reports came out. We have the CPI and the PPI. The CPI is the Consumer Price Index. And that's really what people are paying at the consumer level. So you go to the store, something's on the shelf there. What are you paying for it? Is it more or less than last month? And then there's the PPI, which came out this morning, and that's the Producer Price Index. And that kind of indicates where the CPI is going to be next month. So if the PPI is high this morning, the CPI is probably going to be a little hot next month. And both of those reports were inflationary. The PPI came out this morning at 0.4%. And that's a little bit hotter than what we had expected. That means there's more inflation than what we expected. That's still in the system. And I got to tell you, people say, well, Donald Trump's the president. Why hasn't inflation gone away? The next 6 inflation reports through July all belong to the Biden administration. So everything that's happening right now, because the PPI, CPI that's getting reported today was from last month. Well, last month, Joe Biden was still the president, although it was hard to tell. Was he really the president? We don't know. We don't know who the president was. But he's not the president anymore, so we know that. The things that administration did, which created the rampant inflation back in 2021, 2022, those things still exist in the economy. And what they found is, if you remember, the Federal Reserve, I should have worn my hat that says inflation is transitory, or it says inflation is not transitory, because we all knew that. So inflation went up to about 9%. And then the Fed started raising rates, and the growth rate in inflation came down to about 5%. And then it kind of like, each tick lower was kind of like a painful process. It just took forever. And what they're finding is to go from 9 to 5, well, that's easy. That's the low-hanging fruit. You raise rates, you slow the economy down enough immediately to get those inflation numbers down. You're dragging money out of the economy when you raise rates. But to go from 4, 4.5 down to 2, 1.5, it's a battle. It's really one of the major things that I think cost the Democrats the election in last year, led to the presidency of Donald Trump because people did not forget about inflation. In fact, they're still living it. The prices at the store are still high. And that's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. Now, the growth rate in inflation will come down eventually if Donald Trump does all the things that he wants to do. So, the tariffs, for instance, we're going to talk about tariffs in a minute, but if that's all you did, you're not going to lower inflation because tariffs create some price hikes. That's inflationary. So along with tariffs, you have to be doing things like cutting energy prices. I think is the most important thing that Donald Trump could do domestically would be find ways to increase energy availability, thereby lowering the price. And when that happens, when energy costs less, when gasoline costs less, when natural gas, electricity costs less, everything is cheaper because you go to the grocery store and that box of strawberries, well, it costs less to get to the grocery store. That price is going to come down. So all those prices come down. And when you have cheap energy, and cheap energy is the mother's milk for a growing economy. You got to have cheap energy. You look to places where they don't have cheap energy and I'll show you a weak economy. You show me cheap energy and I'll show you a strong economy because what happens is energy gets cheap, markets expand, people open up businesses, interest rates come down. All these things kind of work in concert. So why, I've been asked this. Donald Trump has been president now for roughly 3 weeks. Does anybody remember Joe Biden? I mean, it seems like there are so many changes happening. Why are we moving so fast? And there's a good reason why they're moving fast. The reason is that we have 16 months until the midterm elections. I mean, the campaigning starts. So in 16 months, if you show the American people that things are definitively different and definitively better, and your wages are up, and more people are working, and interest rates have come down, and it doesn't cost me $120 to fill up my F-150, if he could show people that, he's going to pick up 50 seats in the midterm elections in the House. The Senate is actually geared towards a Republican maybe picking up a couple of seats. So I'm not really worried about the Senate that much. But the House has got the smallest majority in history. It's 2 seats right now. When Elise Stefanik resigns, it'll be 2 seats. She's a congresswoman from New York, and she's going to be part of the administration. So if he doesn't prove those things, if energy hasn't come down in price, if inflation is still high, if we just have tariffs and we haven't cut taxes, he's going to lose 50 seats in the House. You only got a 2-seat majority. If you lose 50 seats in the House, the Democrats are going to do what the Republicans couldn't, and they'll probably impeach the president again. Now, it'll still be a Republican House, so it's not going to go anywhere. But I'm telling you, they're going to do that. The Democrats, when it comes to stuff like this, they're pretty good at sticking together. I'm a firm believer that Joe Biden should have been impeached, mainly for the corruption that we now know was happening. He enriched his family. They did influence peddling. These things are not disputable anymore. We know it happened. So that's why we're moving so fast. There's been something like 80 presidential orders. 80. That's a lot. And there are things like securing the border, no men and women's sports. I think they're common sense things. I like them. This is what I voted for. If you voted for Donald Trump, you voted for Doge. You voted for Elon Musk going in and rooting out corruption. One thing I've noticed is while the Democrats are in a tizzy and they're in an uproar, not one person yet, not one person that I've heard, maybe you've heard it, let me know, but not one person yet has accused him of lying. Not one person. The amount of money that they're sending to places that we haven't said that that's okay. Nobody in the administration has said that's okay. Would boggle your mind. A $50 million payment to them is like a rounding error. what I read is that the Clinton Foundation got $84 million, 10 of which got spent on Chelsea Clinton's wedding. That's what got reported. Would you think that that's corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse? They toss that word around, those three words, waste, fraud, and abuse. Nobody's actually ever rooted it out. I saw a video of President Clinton talking about it, then I saw a video of President Obama talking about it, but nobody ever does anything about it. And finally, they're doing something about it. And yes, it is uncomfortable. And there are some programs that are good that are probably going to get stopped for a while, but it's not our fault. It's the people that commit fraud, waste, and abuse that put you in the position to do this, to have to do this. That's whose fault it is. It's not the good guy's fault when they find corruption and root it out and stop those payments. So a big question I've been getting, and I get this on email, I have people calling me, we hear about it on the radio show, is what about tariffs in the market? Why are we doing tariffs? What is the point of tariffs? And the point of, at the end of World War II, we've talked about this before, there was an agreement called Bretton Woods where we had decimated Europe between what the axis of evil, the Nazis and their band of ne'er-do-wellers did to Europe and what we did to stop them. We took out bridges for like 100 miles in a circle so that the Nazis couldn't cross over or cross back. And somebody had to rebuild all that stuff. And we couldn't write the check to do it. So we brought all the European countries, all the allies, to a place called Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. And they were ready to basically sign over their countries to us. They were going to say, okay, you're the king now. And we surprised the hell out of them. What we said was, oh, we don't want your country. We're going to open up our markets to you tariff-free, and you can send all your stuff here, and that's how we're going to finance the rebuilding of Europe. Oh, and by the way, we're going to build a navy to protect the shipping lanes so you don't have to do it. That's how we became the world superpower. Okay, that's how we did it. A lot of people think China is another superpower. Militarily, they have a lot of nuclear weapons and everything, but economically, they're tiny compared to us. So what we did, though, is we said, but if we try and send stuff to you, you're allowed to tariff us, and we're not going to reciprocate. And so those tariffs, even though Bretton Woods Agreement has basically fallen by the wayside, not officially recognized anymore, a lot of those tariffs stayed in place. So if you build a car here and you try and send it to Japan, 60% tariff. Still now today, 60% tariff. Now, would they buy our cars? I don't know. I have no idea. But the point is, they're paying 60% more because of a 1944 agreement. Well, Donald Trump is saying we're not doing that anymore. Oh, and by the way, if you tariff us on a product, we're going to match your tariff. So it'll be equalized. So there's a tariff. Look at a tariff in two ways. We use it to equalize pricing and create a fair market. And then we use it to punish people. We're going to punish China because what China does is they send steel and aluminum. They put it on a boat. They send it to Mexico, and then it comes up across the border, missing a tariff in China. Well, Mexico does not have a steel industry. They make no steel in Mexico that I'm aware of. It's just they're flaunting the rules. So we're going to tariff China and Mexico on steel because that's all Chinese steel. And what the Chinese do, you say, well, hey, look, when we tariff and protect industries, we stop innovation, and that is true. But what the Chinese do is they subsidize their steel industry. So they make an I-beam. I'm pretending like I'm holding an I-beam, which I could probably do. Okay, so don't look at me cross-eyed. I'm very strong. They make that I-beam, and let's say it costs $1,000. The Chinese government says, well, we'll subsidize you half. So they sell it to us. They sell it here for $500. That's considered dumping. Can't do that. That's illegal. It's government interference. So yes, we are protecting an industry, but we're protecting it from unfair competition. I'm okay with that. When we protected the auto industry back in the 70s, you know what we got? Crummy automobiles that were rusting by the time you drove it off the lot. Remember, you'd see cars all over the place and they'd just be full of rust holes, and wouldn't be old cars. You don't see that anymore. Really, it's rare to see a 10-year-old car with a rust spot on it. It just doesn't happen. So that's why we're doing tariffs right now, to equalize costs, to make it an even playing field, and to punish some people. And when we were going to tariff Canada and Mexico because they're not protecting the border, they're allowing drugs to just come across the border. So we were going to slap a 25% tariff on it. The market did not like that. The market fell pretty dramatically. Now it's recovered all that because Canada and Mexico said, well, wait a minute. We're going to help out. What are you talking about? You got to pressure people. You got to negotiate with people. Donald Trump is a negotiator, and I can tell you most people don't like to negotiate. If we go into a store, we're going to buy a car, myself personally, and my wife is with me, and it comes to negotiation time, she gets up and walks out of the room because she doesn't like that squeamish feeling you get when, you create a little bit of an uncomfortable sense in the air, and then you don't talk. Whoever talks first when the talking stops loses the negotiation. I could stare at you for 20 minutes across the table and say nothing. It's easy for me. I love to negotiate. So, I think that in 6 months, we're probably not going to be talking tariffs anymore. And that brings me to my near-term outlook, which would be the rest of this year. And I think you're going to have a very strong finish to the year because I do think late summer, you're going to get some interest rate drops. It'll be totally appropriate by that time, I think, to start lowering interest rates to a more reasonable rate. But you got to get the 30-year mortgage, which is a very important piece to our economy, always has been. You got to get that 30-year mortgage around 5%. 4.5% would be great. Of course, it's not the genius mortgage that I have at 2.75, but you'll get close. It's not, it's still respectable, not as respectable as mine, but still respectable. And at 2.75%, I'm never paying off that mortgage unless my wife makes me. Because at my house, she's kind of the boss, and I have to live there. And she cooks for me too. She knows the weight of my heart is through my stomach. I think it's going to be a strong finish to the year. And I think if we can layer these plans, so you got some tariffs, you got some tax cuts, you got energy production increases, you've got productivity increase then, markets increasing, you've got lower interest rates, which is another booming housing market, because I know 4.5 is higher than 2.5. I get that math, but when you're coming from 7 and people see 4.5, it is a gift. And it's way lower than the 30-year average in mortgage rates. The long-term average in the 30-year mortgage is around 5%. So if we could get back down to 4.5, 4.75, if you just get below 5, I think you're going to see that housing market be really healthy again. I think it was a little unhealthy at 2%. It's housing prices were skyrocketing so much, a lot of people couldn't afford a house. They still can't. And so long term, I think if you get these things layered, and we're doing these things somewhat coincidentally. I think the last cabinet member is going to get approved probably late tonight, tomorrow. That'd be Kash Patel I think he's the last. To run the FBI, they got RFK Jr. through today. That's not going to affect markets that much, although it will affect pharmaceuticals. But all these things happen coincidentally, and they're in power. They've got the House, they've got the Senate, they've got the White House. You don't need a Democrat vote. You need none. And they're going to get none. So they got to stick together. So we either stick together, or we either hang together, or we hang separately. Wasn't that in the Revolutionary War? Either hang together, or we're going to hang separately. So you got to hang together in this. And I'm talking to you, Bernie Moreno, who's a big Trumper. Rally the troops. He's our new senator. He actually got me tickets to the inauguration, which I have sitting on my desk. I'm going to have those framed. So long term, if we do these things, I love this market. It's going to be a great market. I don't think that rates are going higher because they're going to be doing enough with cutting government spending. And just the USAID thing that's going on is going to save several $100 billion. Can you imagine that we're We're shipping money out to Guatemala for transgender operations. That's what we're supporting. We took the FEMA money. The Biden administration took FEMA money and used it to support illegal immigration instead of helping those people in North and South Carolina and Hawaii. These people suffered horrific tragedies. They've lost everything. And we're taking the money that was meant for that to bring illegal immigrants here. He should have been impeached. He should have been. It drives me nuts that they didn't do that. But that's in the past. That's 21 days ago. Look at how far we've come in 21 days. I'm excited for this. I want you to be excited for it too. I am David Safransky, a real American, a true red-blooded patriot, and the voice you can trust.